I recently did some modeling work. You may not be able to tell because I'm wearing clothes, but I have a killer body. It's been proven by science. It all started like this. In the fall, I took a test. Killer body? It wondered. Now, I'd had a killer body before, having been diagnosed and treated for prostate cancer. Oh, if you don't know, the prostate gland is what produces the liquid that gives babies their baby daddy genes. I had mine removed years ago. Now this test, my numbers had gone up by 0.1 billionth of a gram. Nothing to text home about. Then again, in my experience with life-threatening diseases, when they're stable, you forget all about them. But when there's a change of even a minute amount, your imagination can lead to some pretty deep, dark places. My imagination first started to think of horror stories, but then, well, he decided, you tell him. To become a model. There's big bucks and fame in modeling for people with killer bodies. I couldn't argue with that. We went to see an agent. Jenny T.U., one of the best. Let's get some professional photos of you, she said. Where do I sign up? I'm scheduling 2 photo shoots of you for the same day. Oh, and don't eat anything that morning. Now, I'd seen how skinny models are, but was one meal really going to make a difference? We went for the photos. The first thing I noticed, these artists have some wacky names for their studios. Nuclear imaging. My, don't we take ourselves a little seriously. Then again, it was on brand for my body type. The assistant took me back, sat me in a chair, and proceeded to give me an intravenous drug. Oh, I'd heard how rampant recreational drug use was among models, but I didn't expect it to be so, well, expected. My imagination hoped, we're finally going to experience what ecstasy is like. It would take a little while for the drugs to kick in, so we moved on to our second location. Would this one be called Rocket Science Studios? Au contraire. The sign said, Imaging Center. Ooh la la, très minimaliste. And get this, they'd be taking a CAT scan. I wrote a poem. My agent must think of me as a cool cat. A cat with a killer enough body to warrant a CAT scan. The assistant said, you'll need to disrobe. Now, I know a lot of models take nude shots and, well, frankly, I was flattered. But then I remembered, you can't teach an old dog nude pics. Fortunately, the assistant gave me 2 robes. Put one on normal, one on backward. Saved by the booty shot blockers. Then he gave me a free mochaccino in a bottle. I took a taste. It tasted funny. Had some faceless factory barista slipped a Mickey in my drink? I looked at the label. Coffee, milk, sugar, barium. Now, I know there's a lot of beautiful people with funky diets. Was barium the new keto? It had a spoonful of sugar, so it had a spoonful of sugar, so I choked my mochaccino down. My mochaccino down. My mochaccino down. When I went into the studio, I warmed up my poses. But the photographer said, lie down on the table. Then he left the room, closed the door, and proceeded to talk to me over an intercom. Like, I don't got no COVID, dude. As I lay there, I examined the camera. At my feet was this huge donut-looking thing. The table would move my torso in and out of the donut hole. Now wait a minute. They take a guy who can no longer produce baby daddy genes, force him to have intimate relations on camera with a clownishly large cattle? And get this, the name on the camera was Siemens. I'd heard of practical jokes before, but I couldn't imagine one being so cruel. When we were finished, there was no cuddling, no pillow talk. The photographer pointed the way out the back door. We felt used. Back to nuclear imaging. This photographer would be taking photos of my entire skeleton. Oh, I'd heard how important bone structure was for models. They weren't kidding. And what a cool gig the photographer had. It's literally like Halloween, a scary skeleton Halloween every day. And this camera was much more cozy than the last one. It literally passed within millimeters of my nose. In fact, if it could have given consent, I might have given it a bunny kiss. It's been a long, lonely, hugless COVID. When we were finished, we sashayed our bones out the front door. The following Monday, we returned with my friend Abby to see Jenny T.U. The photos turned out to be excellent, but somehow they weren't good. In the flash of a paparazzo, my life changed. Sitting in front of me was my Jenny T. Urinary medical oncologist. She was no longer my agent. This had no longer been a photo shoot. I was no longer an aspiring model. But I did have a killer body. Again. As I mentioned earlier, years before, I had had my prostate gland removed from my prostate bed. A few years later, the cure was to zap my prostate bed with 40 rounds of radiation. But now, just like Baby Bear found Goldilocks sleeping in his bed, that cat had found a small 2 centimeter soft tissue mass lying in mine. He was still there. Now, when you have a killer lurking inside your body, a small 2 centimeter tissue mass seems pretty big. It's a little like those old movies where someone has a small revolver, but they're calling from inside the house. Only in my case, my assassin had been hiding downstairs in my private basement. The photographer said there was no way to kill my assassin, only to stunt his growth with drugs. Oh, and as seen on TV, there may be side effects. ADT may cause memory loss, mood swings, depression, fatigue, loss of muscle mass, bone thinning, weight gain, hot flashes, libido loss, gynecomastia. What the hell is that? I didn't know either. Talk to your doctor. I did. She said these drugs function in a similar way to castration. Now, later, I asked the woman I live with what she thought. Alexa, what do you think? Many legal experts consider these drugs to be violations of the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment for sex offenders. For sex offenders? I wasn't even having legal loving sex, but it was either do or die. So I made my vow. Till death do us part. Like a shotgun wedding with no fun in the hayloft? As we were leaving, my friend Abby calmed me. Jackson, look on the bright side. At least your murdering Goldilocks was found in only one bed. Abby was so right. That murdering Goldilocks could have been found like stage 4 murdering Goldilockses, all over my body. I have years to live, and if I can no longer produce muscle mass, well, I know there are people that just model their hands, but then my imagination had a better idea. Well, I heard that there's this guy in Maine. I think his name is Stephen King. Anyway, he got rich and famous by just telling horror stories. I can't argue with that. And here I am. Now, does anyone here know an agent